COVID-19 cases are going up again here in California, less than a month since becoming the only state to improve to yellow or moderate transmission levels. The state is back in the red. So could that mean another winter surge is on the way? Here to speak with us to get some more information is Dr. Peter Chin Hung with UCSF. So where are we standing and why in the world are we sliding back?
Well, I think that we are not going to be at the levels that we saw last winter. So I think that's definitely not going to happen. And when I mean not at the levels of last winter, I mean probably no flooding and over flooding of hospitals necessarily. Certainly not the same number of deaths. More than 90% of over 65s have been immunized. But we're seeing a bunch of different things happening. Right now, a huge surge in Europe. It's leading the world right now. We've seen this story before. Something in Europe, and then something happens in the US a month or several weeks later. Number two, there is waning immunity from vaccines. This is particularly pronounced in the older than 65s and those with immunocompromised conditions. But in the general population, what waning immunity does is that it makes you more susceptible to infection or breakthrough infection. And number three is it's getting colder, it's getting darker. People are not spending as much time outdoors, they're gathering indoors. And when you look at where the hotspots are in the US, it's the northern states, and then it's seeping down to California now with an increase in 15% in the last 2 weeks in cases.
Okay, so let's tackle some of those. First and foremost, number one, we've rolled back some of the restrictions in regards to allowing people to fly in and out internationally. So if there's an uptick in Europe, how is that going to necessarily impact what's going on? I mean, we know in times past when there was a surge in Italy, we saw the surge coming, 30 days later?
Yes, and we saw it with Delta too. Remember in the UK, we looked at the storm brewing, we saw that cases were going up, and then we were celebrating with reopening on June 15th, only to realize that that Delta was coming here at the same time. We're not worried about a new Delta, but we're worried about, infections. Maybe it's a new sub-lineage of Delta. AY42 is driving a lot of new cases in the UK. We're not really sure yet, but certainly, as you pointed out, with the opening of borders, not only air travel from Europe, but also overland borders from Mexico and Canada, you're definitely going to see more people moving. And when you have more people moving, despite having conditions to get in the country, you're going to see an increase in cases.
And in regards to the numbers, are we talking about the uptick of people unvaccinated, or are we talking about people vaccinated with breakthrough cases?
So it's more complex. So we're still seeing the vast majority of cases happening in unvaccinated, particularly those with serious disease, the people who go into the hospital, use up that ICU bed, and may unfortunately not survive. But when we think about breakthrough infection, it's kind of like all comers. If you have had your vaccine more than 6 months ago and you have waning immunity, so what the vaccine does in the beginning is gives you these antibodies that decline over time, but your body's T cells and memory immune cells are still there, but it takes a while to come on board. It's like letting the enemy into your front gate, but not into the house. So that's what's happening in vaccinated. Whereas in the unvaccinated, the enemy can get in the front gate and get in the house. That's why you go to the hospital.
So what about as far as Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer? We saw a study come out about 6 months showing kind of a breakdown of if you got J&J, where you're at, Moderna as well as Pfizer. Those two latter ones being mRNA, J&J being, of course, the DNA. So where do we stand now as far as boosters? We have those restrictions in place in regards to boosters. So should that be opened up like a floodgate of everyone getting a booster?
Well, it's interesting because it's expected, not public or information yet, that the Pfizer is going to go for an indication for boosters for everyone over the age of 18. And given that the Biden administration was supportive of that from the beginning, I think it would probably happen. Right now, you can get a booster with self-attestation. But I think, again, the most important vaccine is the first vaccine for most people for hospital resources. But when you talk about preventing infection and traveling, I think more people should think about boosters if they're going to be traveling, if there's somebody elderly or immunocompromised at home, to prevent that infection, because that could have grave consequences in somebody in that household. So in terms of stacking up the vaccines, the gold medalist is Moderna. It's kind of like holding out. Then the silver medalist is Pfizer. And I think for J&J, I would really encourage folks, if they haven't gotten a booster, if they've gotten their J&J more than 2 months ago, they should think about getting it.
And is that more of the DNA technology that's involved with the J&J, or is that more just because it's a one-shot situation?
That's a great question. I think it's more because it's a one-shot situation. In retrospect, the J&J was first conceived as an outreach vaccine, but many people believe in hindsight that it would probably have been best served as a 2-dose vaccine, very similar to the AstraZeneca, which is a very similar kind of vaccine, which was 2 doses up front. But, you know, I think J&J, Pfizer, and Moderna are holding up generally well against people getting into the hospital, but it's waning, particularly in those who are older than 65 and those who are immune compromised.
What about as far as the medications that we're hearing about, Doctor, about these pills that have recently gotten a lot of attention? Will that also help in the whole fight against the pandemic?
It will, for sure. The first pill out of the FDA approval process we expect will be the Merck pill, Molnupiravir. It's 4 pills twice a day. You have to take it within the first 5 days. It cuts down hospitalizations by about 50%. The next pill is Pfizer, Paxlovid. It's, you know, we saw the results a few days ago, 87% to 89% decrease in hospitalizations taken within the first 3 to 5 days, 3 pills twice a day. I think it's not a substitute for vaccination because it's only like a one-time deal. You can still get chronic symptoms from COVID, but nevertheless, it's going to give us another member of the toolkit we can use to control the potential surge that we may see in the U.S.
And that's not something that is going to be over the counter, right? I mean, that's going to be if you get a positive test and you contact your provider, and then that could be something that would be prescribed. And kind of explain how that would happen.
Yeah, so the big difference is you don't need to go to the hospital to get hooked up to IV to get it. It's just like Tamiflu for influenza. You know, you tell your provider you have COVID. They call in a prescription to Walgreens, CVS, or Rite Aid. You go and get the prescription and you start taking it. I think that's one way of thinking about how to use it to prevent people who already are infected. The other ways of using it, which haven't been released yet in terms of the data, are household exposures. So say, or nursing home exposures. Say you have COVID, you're in the household. Other people, you may take those pills to prevent you from going to the hospital, but the other people without symptoms yet can also probably take it in the future to prevent them from even getting it in the first place.
Fascinating. So I noticed that you have the little protein stuffed animal behind you. So tell me, are you using that to talk about the kids? And because I know that in some of the clinics that were set up after, you know, learning that the 5 to 11-year-olds can go, we know that there are some stuffed animals and some balloons and that kind of stuff to try and make it less scary for those kids. Do you think that that's going to really help as far as, you know, making sure the kids are not so scared, and also having a better understanding about that is, you know, it's a protein and that we need to do whatever we can to try and prevent it and from preventing the spread, right?
Well, the answer is yes and yes. I think it's a good place to start when you think about explaining, you know, why COVID does what it does and what the vaccine does, which is to make something that looks like these yellow things, the spike proteins. Then your body makes antibodies against it. So when the real deal virus comes, it can like capture it because it already recognizes this thing. I think it's not enough for kids. I think you have to also, depending on the age of the kid, point out the benefits of getting the vaccine, which is not like to save the world necessarily from the kids' perspective, although some kids would respond to that. It's, you know, having that sleepover with Billy across the street, or going to camp, or going to the movie theater. I think these are the tangible ways that kids can definitely cling on to in terms of thinking about benefits.
I think it's certainly very beneficial that, of course, the shots are smaller and that, it's not this giant needle that even they get with like a flu shot and so forth. Do you think that all of that, the totality of it, do you think that's going to help ease us away from the pandemic?
Oh, definitely. I mean, right now, if you relied on adults alone, we're not even close to getting the level of population immunity that we need. We know that kids not only can get COVID, it's one of the top 10 causes in the last year of childhood deaths, even though we didn't see a lot in the Bay Area. But many of us have been immunized, including adolescents. But in the other parts of the country, yes. And if we're traveling, going to be an issue. Second reason, cut down on school disruptions. Third reason, they want to hug grandma and grandpa and they're traveling to New York for the holidays. Take the vaccine, everybody's going to feel a lot better.
Are you hopeful that going into the Christmas holiday that we can have an uptick? I mean, I know that in Marin County, for example, I was reporting that 5,000 shots went between like 10 and 15 minutes, like they were all full. Do you think that that's hopeful as far as a sign that there are a large part of the population that will get vaccinated for their kids?
Yes, I do think so, but I think it's going to be regional, just like what we saw in adolescents. In San Francisco County, more than 90% adolescents have been immunized. The average for the rest of the country, 50% or so. I think it's probably going to be the same for kids aged 5 to 11. But what I do think with that first wave of kid vaccinations is that other people, other parents on the fence, which is a large proportion when you look at the Kaiser Family Foundation data, 40%, will then feel more confident. Look, the kids across the street, they got the vaccine, nothing happened. They didn't change into a werewolf. It's going to be safe. It's going to be okay.
I have heard from parents who say that they don't want their children to be guinea pigs and that they want to see exactly what happens, and thinking that if someone across the street is okay, then maybe that would be okay for their family.
I think so. I mean, I think it's going to be different risk benefits for different households. I think on one hand, some parents may be okay with waiting and masking the kids until they feel more comfortable. On the other hand, if a parent has, again, somebody who's vulnerable in the household, they're planning to travel, if their kid has comorbid conditions like diabetes or obesity, they may think about getting vaccinated sooner rather than later.
Is there anything else you think is important as we kind of move forward? I think sometimes the information gets a little cloudy, kind of like another atmospheric river, where we're hearing again that there's this wave and we're sliding over to red, and it just gets kind of confusing, and then it makes people very anxious and certainly kind of emotional when they think, oh goodness, we've done all this, now we're going to slide back, and it's, kind of topsy-turvy at times, right?
It is topsy-turvy, and I love your metaphor of the atmospheric river, because that's exactly how it's feeling in my mind right now. But there are a lot of silver linings. First of all, I don't think we in the Bay Area are going to be hit particularly hard. We're pretty resilient with this immunity force field right now. I think with immunizing the kids aged 5 to 11, we'll get even further along. As a country, I'm not sure. There'll be regional surges like we're seeing now in Montana and the Dakotas. We've seen in Alaska, Colorado. We're beginning to see something in California, but large droves of us are not going to go into the hospital like before. And again, the silver lining is we can do something about it, and we are doing it. Look at all the people getting these appointments. And I think we just have to stick and think about the positives. We've learned a lot in the last year and so, and we'll continue to be resilient as we face the future.
Kind of reminds me of going to college, right? If you fail one class in your freshman year, it doesn't mean that you're going to fail the entire college. You will graduate at some point if you just keep your eye on the prize, right?
Exactly. Keeping our eyes on the prize, protecting ourselves, our families, but also protecting our community is something that we'll continue to be laser focused on. We've done it before in the Bay Area. We continue to do it. I have no doubts that we will be successful in the long run.
Well, I always like being positive, so I'm going to end on a positive note. We always appreciate your time and your intellect and educating us about all this.